Welcome, welcome, welcome. Welcome to our spiritual morning. Let's start this beautiful morning by just going internally, by closing our eyes, straightening our backs, being in alignment with our breath, and simply observing the flow of breath. This flow of breath teaches us so much. This breath is unconditionally flowing, giving us life, sustenance, longevity. Just the way this breath flows in, may we also all start flowing in life without contemplating, without having conditions attached. Being humans, we will have principles and virtues. May we all just flow like water, like breath, in alignment with the nature of this universe, keeping its laws in mind. Let's all imagine ourselves being transported to our sanctuary, a sanctuary which we can create by visualizing whatever we want. Some may create a beach, some may create a mountain area, some may create a riverside, some may just create some other beautiful, maybe a forest. This sanctuary is where we connect with our masters, with the angels, with the guides, with the spirit guides, with the gurus, teachers, ancestors, loved ones. This sanctuary helps us familiarize ourselves. Some of us have made the sanctuary before as well. So time for us to go back to what we made. And there can always be more changes in sanctuary according to your comfort level. This is also one place where anybody you want to mend relationships with can be invoked. And only you know how to send the person back or call the person forth. If you wish, you can call somebody else and talk to him or her and do the beautiful acts of forgiving and forgetting. Remember, only when we give do we get, and that's what forgive and forget teaches us again and again. The person who forgives, who lets go, is a supreme one. We are eternal beings. If we have any bondages with anybody in this life, either we are extremely close, very, very attached, or very, very detached, and we just can't forgive a person for something wrong he or she has done to us. Then we must remember the law of karma. Because we have this karmic bondage with them, we will reincarnate with them again with the same tough bonds. What we don't clear in this life, we will be forced to clear in that life. So please take 2 minutes. Speak to the soul that you've invited here. If you have anybody, and simply let go. You can always say, I choose to clear any karmic baggages, bondages between you and me. I let myself free here on. I choose to clear any negative cords that are there between you and me, and I snip them clear. And if you wish, you can do a sword cutting effect from all your chakra points, from where you are connected with him or her, whether you can see the bonds or whether you can't see the cords, just simply clear, like as if you're cutting from the sword. Just do deep cuts. Cut at your third eye level, throat level, heart level, solar plexus level, sacral root level, root chakra level. And now that you've done deep cuts, just pinch clean your areas where you've done a deep cut from. And when you pinch them clean, they become healed, whole, and complete. And for those of you who have no one that they want to let go, you can take another 2 minutes and do a lotus of gratitude by thinking of 10 beautiful things that have happened in the last 48 hours since we met each other. After this practicing of beautiful gratitude, let's think of the three things that we desire. Our wish list. Whatever it is that we desire, see it unfolding. Enjoy the process of seeing yourself, see your dreams come to fruition. And for those of you who wish to see them in life come to fruition, think of the three things which you can do every single day, simple, doable things that will lead you into the fruition of your dreams. 3 steps per dream. So if you have 3 dreams, there are 9 steps. Life is beautiful, giving us so many blessings, giving us a life of purpose, of flow, of authenticity, of passion, of purpose. But being humans, it's natural that we have desires. These desires could be spiritual, ethereal, physical, emotional, mental. It doesn't matter. Remember, small things make a big difference. In achieving your dreams, just break them into small, doable actions. See yourself doing the action day after day after day. You will succeed. The day will come when that sun will rise of your glory. So the sun rises every single day. If we start being thankful to it now, we will develop this muscle of gratitude, of appreciation. If you finished your one beautiful dream coming true with 3 steps, move on to the second. If you finish the second, move on to the third. And if you don't have any dreams, then just expand your gratitude. Take these beautiful few minutes in the beginning of this wonderful week and work on your gratitude. Because gratitude is the biggest multiplier and will give you whatever you need. Remember, if your mind wanders, bring it back to your dream and feel the dream coming true in this very moment in the present. Because remember, the universe is a giver, everything is available in abundance. Just that we have to change our frequency, our bandwidth of receiving, of believing emotionally. When our emotions are in tandem, in alignment with what we're receiving, feeling that it's there, we're attracting the very possibility as a manifestation coming true. This could also be if you have a spiritual goal of having downloads. It could be that spiritually you want to evolve and you want to have connects and you want to feel that the masters and gurus and teachers, spirit guides, angels, guardians are talking to you and you're able to hear their conversation very clearly. That could also be a dream. And for that you can believe that you have a conversation. Work on it. And to reach there, what should you do? Sitting in silence every day and beginning to figure out how it feels when you have this beautiful conversation with your masters. Everything is possible. We all have felt our higher self speak as a gut feeling or as a little message that we hear. It's very similar. When masters speak, it's beautiful. Some of them are jovial, they make fun. Some of them are serious. Let's try and have a conversation. These mornings are so powerful when we're open and receptive to all the goodness and all the abundance that our universe has for us, and when we trust the process that life only gives and flows for our highest good, then it truly starts giving us so much more. But for this, we must train our mind to become gentle and harmonious. And the first step towards is to start loving and approving of ourselves and freeing ourselves from any limitation that we think we have. When we start accepting ourselves as a beautiful gift of life that God has chosen to give us, that our soul has chosen to live in, and when we keep reaffirming to ourselves that we are loved, we are lovable, and when we bless our bodies, that our bodies are super healthy and they are in their optimal health at all given points of time, is my belief, then so it is. If there's any financial trouble and you start counting your blessings by saying, thank you for all the money I've been given throughout my life. Whenever a need arises for something, the money is always present. I am so blessed. And so it is. We all have to elevate our frequency in that pattern, and the world starts opening up. But if we shadow that beautiful, expansive world with our fears and our phobias and our misgivings and our layers of doubt, then so that's what unfolds. What emotion do we feel? That is what is expanding. Energy in motion becomes the emotion. The emotion becomes the manifestation. Whether we are aware or whether we're not aware, it's known or whether it's unknown. So let's increase our vibration in this beautiful community that we are there. Collective consciousness, let that be elevated. That will not only help us in our own ascension, but also the ascension of our Mother Earth, which we owe so much towards. And for this, there are few steps that we must make and take every day. One is grounding ourselves. To ground ourselves is very simple. Just take off your footwear and walk bare feet, preferably on grass. I know it'll sound yuck, but maybe play with mud or walk and let your feet get muddy. It doesn't matter. You can always wash them off or wipe them away. And if all that doesn't make sense to you, walk in your house bare feet, on your marble, on your wooden floor, on your tile floor, whatever floor you have. And consciously close your eyes for 1 minute daily by just standing where you are and seeing the golden healing light of Mother Earth entering through your gorgeous feet that will ground you. At the same time, if you wish to have universal spiritual power, you can imagine the healing white light, bluish white light coming from heavens above, and the two mixing in your body, opening up any possible blockages, which means any disease, any pain will also vanish away because that's the power of healing. When you will be pure light, how can there be anything which is of lack of light? How can there be darkness? Disease or anything is just nothing but darkness. So when you are light, then let the light flow. You can always see this light coming out of every pore of your body because when you become light, you're sharing the light with the world. It doesn't matter whether you've taken one or two or three, four people and you're doing it together or just sharing it widely with whoever's open and receiving. It doesn't matter. What matters is the intention that my light shines bright and I share it to the world, helping somebody else who needs this light to lighten up his or her world. That intention is pure and beautiful. It doesn't matter whose life becomes lightened up. The power of healing is immense. Many of us in Life Transformation series have done the universal healing of individual healing, and we have seen greatness occur. Now, for our increasing of our energy, we've done grounding. We also must be very clear of clearing our aura daily. Because if our aura is weak and there are holes, any earthbound attachments can get attached, which means anything to do with dark can get attached. So for this, simply take some rock salt and wash your hands the way you wash your hands with soap and detergent. Simply wash your hands with that salt. And when that is flowing in water, when you're washing your hands, just feel all the dirt, all the extra attachments flowing out of your body. You can also do one thing, that expand your hands in the abundance pose and feel all the divine light coming over you, like you're being subjected to a rainfall of sunlight or of light. And with that, you say, I release all possible attachments, good or bad. That doesn't make you heartless, huh? So if you're saying good attachments, why should I wash them away? Any kind of attachment is going to be a deterrent in your karmic energy flow. So it doesn't mean that if you're washing away the good attachment, the child or the person will never love you again. No, that doesn't matter. It just means that if you're excessively obsessed, which some other time Indian parents get with their children, grandparents, that obsession will get over and you will not treat the person as your own. You will treat the person with lots of love and light, but not with obsession. And now, get ready. Rub your hands and bless the world. Bless yourselves and gently open your eyes. And today we read this beautiful book yet again. Every single day we're reading this book, and it's making us believe more and more in miracles happening all the time. It's changing our frequency. So today's story is about embracing equality. And here we begin it. When I first met Gabriella, I couldn't help but notice the sparkles. Her jewelry, sequenced purse, shiny, strappy shoes caught my attention, as most doctors that I meet casually don't wear such items. A well dressed Caucasian woman with flawless fair skin, long blonde hair, and the bluest eyes. She had a bubbly personality. Everything about her was sparkly. She was excited to begin the session. It shone in her eyes. We talked briefly about why Gabriella had come for the past life session. She wanted to understand the best taking anxiety that had plagued her throughout her entire life. She tended to over prepare for major tests in college and even for state boards. But when it came time to take the test, the anxiety was always there. A secondary issue was to take the test. That as an only child, she had felt that she constantly had to strive to be the best. Although she had the desire to become a doctor, there was added pressure to excel in her chosen field. Gabriella regressed easily into the past life, but she was startled to land in the body of a 6 year old African American child standing in the middle of a cotton field. The tone of her voice became that of a little girl as she spoke to me. It was not the color of her skin that surprised her. It was the dirty, threadbare rags that were clothing and the shoes that were too old and worn to even cover her feet. She was filthy from being in the hot cotton field all day long. Give me a second, I was muting Vandana. She tends to get unmuted. Her hair were in pigtails, but they were frizzy and in a terrible state of disarray. Gabriella started crying at the condition of the body in which she found herself. She looked up and saw herself standing beside a big lady with coal black skin, the same color as hers. She smiled, comforted by the sight of Mama's thick cheeks and peaceful smile. Mama looked at her daughter, calling her sugar and commenting on the heat as she continued to pick the cotton. Gabriella had the sudden recognition that this woman in her current life was her paternal grandmother, with whom she shared a close bond. It was the mid 1800s in Jamestown, Virginia. Sugar and her mama and others like them lived in one of the many shacks situated on the backside of the house where the plantation owner and his family lived. Mama worked all day in the cotton fields. Sugar didn't know where her daddy was. He had never been around. She did not like living there. Mama kept me safe from the white people who are mean and spit on me. Not all of them are this way. The white men, they think they're better, but they're not. They ignore me and are disrespectful to my mother, but not to Lily's mother or father. Lily Williams was a young daughter of the plantation owner. She had golden blonde hair, blue eyes, and light skin. Her favorite color was blue, so her mother dressed her in blue dresses with matching ribbons in her hair. She and Sugar were the same age. Lily wore pretty, colorful clothes that were not dirty like those of the kids from the shacks. Sugar longed to wear clean, bright colored clothing, to live in the front house and be accepted like Lily and her parents. Miss Anna, Lily's mother, was kind to Sugar. She let the girls play together by the river. They swung from the rope swing into the water and sometimes held hands, like little girls do. But Sugar was aware that she wasn't allowed to do this when the other white people were around. We like the same thing, Sugar said, crying again. I'm just dark. Dark skin makes it like I'm not equal. Lily's parents don't make me feel bad. Just don't let others know, they say. As the girls got older, Sugar would watch Lily go to the schoolhouse, dressed in her pretty clothes, with her books in hand. She wanted to go with her, but she had to accept that such a thing would never be permitted. The big house was a brick colonial set on a large plot of land. It had the bulky, rich furnishings often seen in the homes of the wealthiest families of that period. Lily lived there with her mother and father and the house slaves who took care of the place. Miss Anna was a nice lady, somewhat plain looking and fragile in health. She always regarded Sugar with kind eyes. A big man, Mr. Don Williams, Lily's father, wore his thick silver hair pulled back into a ponytail. He was wealthy and owned the plantation and all the slaves who lived there. Sugar would watch from the screen door as he sat inside and ate at the table. She wasn't allowed in, but she could wait there patiently for Lily to come out. Like his wife, Mr. Dawn was nice to Sugar. He let the children play together and even helped her learn how to read. It wasn't too long before Miss Anna's health failed completely and she died. Soon after, Mr. Dawn remarried to a strict, proper Southern woman who didn't believe in the races mixing and didn't allow the girls to play together or read anymore. Gabriella recognized the stepmother as her own current life mother. Sugar grew up with the knowledge of what it felt like to be ignored, to not be seen, to not exist. It made her angry that people treated her this way just because the color of her skin, but she knew her place, knew the trouble she'd be in if she expressed it. She wanted to grow up to be somebody, to make a difference, to live in the big house, to be accepted. Being able to read would prove to be invaluable to her. Mr. Dawn and Lily secretly educated her. She missed Miss Anna, who was so kind. The lessons were kept quiet so that the stepmother wouldn't know of them. Sugar loved reading and reporting everything back to Mama, who told her how proud she was that her daughter was smart enough to learn how to read. Sugar was a spirited girl who was learning to stand up for herself, learning to appreciate being seen and heard. As the times changed, she changed with them. She felt the power of being heard when she and many other women and girls participated in a women's march. What's right, what's wrong is wrong. She demanded, no longer afraid to speak her mind. Women deserve to be heard, they will be heard. Mr. Dawn granted Sugar her freedom and her education on the plantation, granted her admittance to the medical school. She graduated as one of the first black female doctors in the state of Virginia and went on to open a practice in nearby Washington, D.C. She had a house just like theirs, and the pretty clothes for which she'd always wished. Her doors were open to anyone needing treatment, whether or not they would pay. To her, they were all the same. Equally was as important to her then as it was to my client Gabriella, who had always fought for this in her practice equality, regardless of gender of skin color. Sugar married a farmer who didn't have much education. It didn't matter to her. She liked him. They raised their three children together. She lived a long life practicing medicine and fighting for the rights of people until her death at 86 years old. Although she did not feel ready to end that life, her body simply wore out. When Sugar passed into the light, she was greeted by many people, including Mama, who stepped forward to comfort her. A guide explained to her that she had done what she had been born to do, which was to stand up for fairness and people's right. She had proved by example that women could be and do what anyone could, regardless of money or race. Her growth had come through living both sides of equality and knowing what it felt like to be discriminated against based on the color of her skin. She hadn't let discrimination stop her, for she had become an educated black woman in a society where many white women didn't even work as doctors. And in her current life as Gabriella, she continues to help people. Her patients sense her courage and feel safe when she listens to them, while others are quick to brush them off because of the color of their skin. This is helping the residual effects of racism go away. Gabriella's guide revealed that it was time now to let go of self criticism in her current life. Her sole lesson was one of non judgment, yet there was still the feeling of being judged and of always having to prove herself. This was creating the added anxiety around test taking. It was the same way Sugar had felt judged when sitting in a classroom for the very first time in medical school. The guide gave Gabriella a quick glimpse at another life in which she was healthy and wealthy and lived in an Irish castle. Just spare me a second. Many people of all different races lived there. She had pale white skin and wore beautiful things, and she treated people as equals in her kingdom. It was important to her that she treated people, the workers of her kingdom, know it was important to her that the workers in her kingdom know they were not second class citizens and that everybody was the same regardless of their skin color. This woman was adamant about fairness and equality. Gabriella was shown the contrast to know that all of them, all of her past lives, although working through the contrast, I'm sorry, what is wrong with me? Gabriella was shown the contrast to know that all of her past lives, although working through the theme of freedom and equality, did not have the same hardships that she had faced as Sugar. Her soul had lived both extreme, and she could now find balance with non judgment. Following the session, Gabriella was ecstatic. She talked about the strong connection she had with that cotton plantation, which went beyond a passing interest. As a young girl living in the South in the current lifetime, her heart would cry out to the people on the plantation in the country near her home. But this time, she was born into a family of means who were able to give her a first class education, nice clothes, and all the material comforts she didn't have in her life as Sugar. Gabriella loved beautiful clothing and jewelry, but never judged them. She wouldn't afford them even as a child, and in college, and certainly as a doctor, she had stood up for equality when she saw minorities being left out or treated unfairly. Gabriella and her family, who were all part of the life as Sugar, have a real special affinity for Williamsburg, Virginia, visiting regularly, and even in the case of Gabriella and her husband, as well as her parents, becoming engaged there. Interestingly, grandmother in this life, who was her mother in that life on the plantation, has always called her by the nickname Sugar. Gabriella's anxiety about taking tests is different now because she knows that she's prepared and that the anxiety isn't coming from not knowing the material. It's coming from her lifetimes as Sugar when she had once before sat in a room of peers and been judged for the color of her skin. Knowing that this was allowed her to punctuate the anxiety so that she can put peace around it, tremendously lessening the impact it once had in the past, says Brian Blankenship. Dr. Brian By says, we are all the same. We have all been all races, all religions, all colors, both sexes, and many nationalities because we have to learn from all sides. Now, there's a soft reminder to all of us who are actively or engaged in talking about BJP and their pro Hindutva, or Muslims, or Christians, or communities, or blacks, or whites, or yellows. It doesn't matter, whatever you're talking about. Remember, we are all spiritual beings. Whether we are Hindu, in Hindu, some other sect, whether we are Buddhist, whether we are any religion, it doesn't matter. We all have been there. And if we disregard anyone, then remember you're doing disservice to one of your avatars that have been born before, and you're doing disservice, which means you're also working on some karmic bondages. We are about equality, we are about oneness, especially when we are spiritual. So if we are doing anything which is not spiritual, then remember you're not in the right flow. Then it's a pretense that you read such beautiful books, but then on the other part, you're talking about politics, about division, about hatred, about racism. But if you're appreciating any of those, then that's different. One can appreciate any religion, any politics, any matter, as long as one is appreciating. But if you're talking about from the point of coming from hatred, then it's different. Now, again, there are two versions of talking about hatred. One is Why is the world so hateful? Why is it doing so much disparity? That's still a comment to be made. But one is like, I hate this, I hate that, I don't like this, I don't like that. So you will yourself know that your tone is going wrong. So now is the time for all of us to do conscious living. Very, very important. We are souls, and souls do not possess such outer and transient characteristics. If everyone were to grasp this concept, racism would instantly disappear. So we all know that our soul has worn the garment called the person that we are. So whether the soul has a name of Mudita or Madhuri or Pratima Ji or Vandana, it does not matter. What matters is, what are these said people doing in their life to help their soul accomplish its purpose which it was born with? No soul is greater than other. Unfortunately, even innocent children are not exempted from discrimination prejudice. As a young girl, Chiga was prevented from attending school and playing with her friend. Donna, the author of the following story, remembered a past life as a child in the concentration camps. How many lifetimes will it take to learn the lessons of love? Another story about childhood connections. That's about Donna, right? That Dr. Y has just told us about. So Donna Offerdinger says, during a regression on your 2011 cruise, you led us back to a childhood memory. As you were telling us what you were going to do, I thought that I would go to the memory of one of my little sisters was brought home from the hospital. However, I didn't go there. But actually went was to a time when I was 4 years old, when Deborah, another sister of mine, and I got our tonsils out. We were in the hospital and were out to sleep with gas. Put to sleep with gas. After a few days of eating ice cream and jello, we were released. In order to leave, we needed to be wheeled out in a wheelchair. I cried and would not get in the wheelchair. My mother tried to get me in by telling me that I would be spanked when we got home. Sure enough, I was spanked. You told us to move on to the lifetime that may help with the childhood memory. I felt grey. Everything was grey. I couldn't see a thing. I felt enclosed and far away from anything. I was 8 years old. We were asked to look at our feet and see what kind of shoes we had on. I had none. I was barefoot. I was being pushed in a wheelchair to my death in a gas chamber. When you asked us to see if there was anything we recognized from this life, I didn't see any eyes, just the back of heads, and I cried. I was a very active 14-year kid. So I always wondered why the wheelchair in my childhood scared me so much. Thank you for helping me to know what has happened. I enjoyed your seminars, but in each session I was able to regress. It has changed me. I understand more of my decisions and my path. Dr. Weiss adds, we have all carried over fears, phobias, talents, affinities, relationships from our past lives. In Donna's case, no rational reason existed for a panic attack. And the reaction to the wheelchair, where she was 4 years old, she had always wondered why she was so frightened. Her reaction did not fit. Once the past life linked to her gas chamber wheelchair was understood, her behavior made sense. The phobia was extinguished when it never returned. Gail, who shared a somewhat similar past life as Donna, had severe symptoms of insomnia that completely resisted any kind of treatment. Once regressed, she found herself as a child in the concentration camp before being taken there. Nazis equipped with machine guns had burst into her house while she was asleep. She woke panicked and frightened only to witness the Nazis shoot her parent. She had been killed at the children's camp as a young teenager. Gail had been serving her captors and biting her tongue because she had to, but when she went to her death, she did so with dignity, showing no fear. Shortly after remembering this traumatic lifetime, Gail's sleep difficulty disappeared and it has not returned. Her insomnia was resolved because she knew the sudden and terrifying awakening by the German soldiers was from a past life, not her present one. The initial
or root cause of an issue was brought to consciousness. The past life wound was healed. Gail was now can now speak her mind, her truth, without having to bite her tongue or hold back for fear or severe consequence. This also is of the past. Now she is free. The author of the following story had to learn these lessons about holding back and standing up to those in power. She too, once enslaved, is now free. Overcoming enslavement. How could that be me? I asked myself. The woman that I was studying was someone whom I would never recognize as myself. Her body was deadly thin, wrinkled. She wore a burlap type tunic which was held onto her rat like frame and a rope at the waist. She looked 80 years old, but was probably only in her 40s. In contrast to her abject poverty, she wore a valuable gold ring with a deep blue moon shaped stone about the size of a nickel. I had started this life as a young, beautiful, strawberry blonde girl. Once the harshest of lives in isolation could have caused this much change in the lifetime, she loved to ride horses through the countryside and gardens because her mother was deceased and her father was unavailable to her. She rode freely, too freely. She was ignorant of her bands of men who roamed purposefully to conquer. The town dictator, a young man himself, had her kidnapped. Her horse was brutally killed. Her world changed permanently overnight. David was a kidnapper, a man of influence in her town. After impregnating her, he had a wedding ceremony performed by the local clergy. Other men gathered around the couple to witness and guard them from onlookers who might interfere. The baby was taken from her at birth. The woman was imprisoned until she became too unhealthy and desirable to entice companionship, at which point she was threatened and beaten. Her life of enslavement, at which point her life of enslavement to David was symbolized by her blue stone ring, which everyone who was connected to him was required to wear. She became his delivery woman. She transported valuable items, but she had become such an outcast in the community that no one would interfere with the deliveries. She might as well have been a leper. The townspeople always made a point to ridicule and mock her poverty and enslavement. She was glad to be left alone in her, but on the outskirts of David's property, it ensured a respite from the societal degradation and, worst of all, the constant threats of physical injury. Although her hut barely protected her fire pit from the extinguishing cold winds and mist, the fire was greatly appreciated luxury to her starving body. The most difficult of her tasks was going to retrieve from David the items she was to deliver. She had to pass by animal pens that housed small creatures who were used to torture. She saw them suffering from beatings and painful amputations. Worst of all, she was seeing the suffering but no longer having the feelings of empathy that would motivate her to release them. Her own suffering had dehumanized her to a state of dull existence. Upon entering the doctor's chamber, she showed her blue stone ring. She kneeled, expecting ridicule and abuse. It was common and inescapable. None of the abuse and horror affected her anymore. Her life was truly that of a victim. There was no choice or escapes unless she was to fight back, which would lead to death. In the last moments of her life, I saw her squatting in front of a fire in her hut with one first one in many days. I could see and feel that her kidneys and her organs had begun to shut down due to starvation. She fell over next to the fire and her heart stopped beating. It was a pathetic, unrewarding, invisible way to die. As I left that body, I could see the mental enslavement that this body had contained. I had believed that it was better to do the work of evil than to fight back. I learned that fighting back and dying would have been better than living enslaved. Furthermore, complying with the dictator had caused him to become more entrenched in his power. I had nothing to lose by fighting back. I was going to die anyway. The familiar characters from that life and my present one were my mother, who died when I was 19 and entering the adult world, and my father, who was emotionally unavailable, detached throughout more of my childhood. The dictator was my second husband, who was emotionally and physically abusive for the 6 months that my daughter and I lived with him. The lessons I learned in that lifetime were that it was okay to be young and beautiful. Young people need support, guidance, and possibly protection as they face the adult world. I learned that it is better to fight back to the life of the enslavement. Compliance is a slow death. The things I brought to this lifetime are a deep love and empathy for animals and for those marginalized by society. I spent 25 years of my life working as an advocate for abused and disabled children. I brought a deep bond and protection for my daughter, my one and only child. I appreciate the choice to leave enslaving situations, and I exercise compassion for all, knowing that we are all shaped by our experiences, both past and our present. The debts accruing from Alice's past life, says Dr. Brian Weiss, will be an obligation to David and his cohorts. To abuse, torture, humiliate, or kill animals and humans creates karma that must be resolved. They will have to make it up to Alice and the others. Our lessons are of compassion and kindness, not hatred and violence. We were in reality spiritual beings. We are in reality spiritual beings. It is never too late to reorient yourself to your spiritual or destined path and to leave these lessons afresh and to learn these lessons afresh. Wherever you are now is simply a point in time, and the future is multifaceted, changing and growing as you do, no matter how we have acted in the past. Every moment presents another opportunity to treat one another with care and consideration. Even David, at the height of his tyrannical reign, could have decided to become a kinder person, to open his heart, to increase his understanding, to choose love. There are all things that we know so well, yet you don't always put into practice. A person who acts out of ego or strictly from intellect can wander very far away from his path. But a person who acts from his or her heart cannot, for the heart will always pull him back. Listen to your intuition, for that is the open heart at work. Choose the loving path, it will never lead you astray. The most difficult lifetime often provided the opportunity for accelerated spiritual growth. Such lifetimes do not automatically imply negative karma from the past. Perhaps you chose the difficult life so that you could progress the most. Alice's existence as a delivery woman was very hard and heavy, but she learned invaluable wisdom, and in her present incarnation, she is manifesting great empathy, compassion, and loving service. The most beautiful flowers often arise from the seeds hidden and nurtured by the cold, wet mud. During a 5-day workshop, an attendee, namely Stacy, told me that her breathing was becoming more labored, even though she had not yet experienced any past life or childhood memory. She thought that pollens and other antengens might have been in the air, for grass, flowers, and trees were blooming in the early summer warmth of the New York Hudson Valley, where the intensive workshop was taking place. She also told me that she had a history of asthma. I suspected that other factors might have been at work, and so I chose to digress her in front of the group. I picked a volunteer to hold a microphone close to Stacy's mouth so that the group could hear any words that she spoke during the regression. Another group member, a surgeon from Alabama, was hunched forward in his seat as I began this hypnotic success process. At the time, I did not know that my randomly chosen microphone holder sitting right next to Stacy was a speech therapist and an expert in respiratory conditions. Stacy's first memory was of choking on a slice of apple when she was a young girl. She had panicked all the time, but her mother's response was to give her bread balls to help ease the apple down in her stomach. This failed to help and perhaps exacerbated the situation. The little girl couldn't breathe and she became very terrified. Finally, her mother held her upside down by the ankles and firmly whacked her on the back, dislodging the apple slice. I asked Stacy how she had felt just before the apple popped out from the throat. Frightened to death, she said. The phrase became the bridge that I used to uncover her past life. When were you frightened to death before? I asked. Her answer quickly followed. She had been an 11-year-old boy who had fallen into a rowboat into a lake. The currents carried the boy away from him, and they entered him farther and farther from the shore. He finally became too fatigued to swim any longer. Nobody was around to hear his cries for help. He drowned, grasping and swallowing the lake water. Stacy's breathing was raspy and rapid, but when the boy's consciousness floated above his body and above the lake and the clouds, it completely changed. She could inhale so freely and deeply now, with no difficulty at all. So as I awakened, her breathing remained relaxed, and it continued to be so even as the audience asked her questions about her experience as a choking girl and the drowning boy. She had a strong feeling that her respiratory problems would not resurface. The microphone holding speech therapist had also noticed the remarkable changes. Clavicular breathing, she had observed, had become diaphragmatic, the surgeon agreed. Past life outcomes shed light on present day phobias and conditions. Once those are remembered, similar situations will never frighten you to death anymore. Renata's story below provides you more support of this concept. We will read that story tomorrow. For now, let's close our eyes and be beautifully grateful to all the lessons that we learned. In today's book reading, we learned about discrimination. We all have known, and yet we discriminate. Now let's understand how we discriminate. Maybe if some sweets have come to your house, you have thought that you or your family members might eat them after they've come for a day or two or three. And now, when they are somewhat getting dehydrated, a little old, you're scared that they will become bad. And now, when they're half bad, you pass them on to your staff. You may even tell the staff, if they have a family close by, that take it to your children or eat it. But then ask yourself, why could I have kept four pieces and given the rest fresh for them to be eaten? Then it wasn't discrimination. Now there is discrimination because I think now we would eat so they can, because you don't want them to get spoiled. How does that remind you of equality, of equanimity, when you yourself knowingly, unknowingly discriminate? Giving somebody something that you don't use is fine. But giving that something to somebody when the due date is over or when the things became stale is an act of discrimination in itself. We have all been slaves, we have all been used to being thrown around. We may have forgotten that memory, but will you now want to be in the position of the person that you were discriminating against? If no, then when we are so blessed and we count our blessings, why not change the way we live every day, the quality of our life? Why do we shush away that little boys and girls who clean the glass windows on the red lights? How if we start giving them a toffee each? They're not asking for money or doing something they may be asking for money, but are they doing it on their own will? No, they're being forced to do. So rather than give them money and fulfill their pockets of the people who put them in the task, how about giving them a packet of biscuit or a toffee, which literally brighten up their hearts? Let's reflect on ourselves in our daily life. Do we live a life of discrimination? We are all the privileged ones who have staff working for us in our houses, whether full time or whether part time, doesn't matter. How do we look at them? It's very important to go inward. It's very important to connect inwards. Why are we who we are? What makes us do acts of unkindness, unempathy, non compassion? Why? Because our ego self, our fear, our complexes, namely the ego, makes us feel that we can exercise these rights. But can we? We all know that conscious living is the best living. And if every day we realize where we falter and we change the very step, the very path, we will be on the way of spiritual evolution. Let there be love, let there be light, let there be empathy, let there be compassion, let there be kindness beyond boundaries, beyond words, beyond people. May each one of us be the conduit, the channel to spread love and light, wherever, however possible, in our own means. And with this beautiful promise, let's just rub our hands together, bless the world where consciousness, empathy, compassion, kindness, love, and acceptance become the key elements. And feel the consciousness of people rising. Maybe you can imagine the floating buildings, it's all right. Whatever makes it easy for you. And now turn these hands inwards towards your heart. From here on, I am willing to learn to love myself unconditionally, to prosper, to exceed, to scale, to understand, to develop these virtues of compassion, empathy, love, kindness, and just being love and light. Now, again, rub your hands together and bless your entire body with these wonderful blessings of affirmations. May you be whatever you desire, and may your consciousness rise. May your ascension take place fast, helping in Mother Earth's ascension. So be it. So it is. With love, light, and blessings, let's begin this beautiful day with the promise of having a wholesome life. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I shall see you tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. Until then, lots of love and light to you. Keep shining bright.